speaking of devils, ladies and gentlemen, there are reports that Donald Trump was mad that the economy is not hitting the growth marks that it was they had projected following the tax cuts. And apparently his chief economic advisor, who has been really beset with a lot of health issues, apparently, Lawrence Kudlow, rolled out of bed, saw Stephen Moore on television saying that, well, the reason why there's not growth is because the Fed is not dropping rates. Went to Donald Trump and said, you should think about Stephen Moore. That's my best impression of. And apparently Donald Trump is thinking about Stephen Moore, who has been a longtime TV economist.
There you go.
And semi-pundit.
That's the best kind.
Who is, and you can really, I think you could probably turn on any cable news outlet to see an example of him being completely wrong. And not just completely wrong in projection and conjecture, but like just making up facts, just telling lies and getting called out on it. And yet he continues to return and gets fired from one place, gets hired again, and then he ends up at the Heritage Foundation, which is sort of basically a genuine welfare job. And here he is. Let's just add to that the pantheon of things that Stephen Moore got horribly wrong. He was brought in as one of the consultants for the Kansas Miracle, the one true experiment of the Laffer curve. In fact, they even brought in Arthur Laffer. Sam Brownback did. Here's an interview that he's giving back in 2014 on the Kevin Price Show, talking in 2014 about the Kansas Miracle that is about to be unleashed. They have just cut taxes. In fact, the tax cut was very similar to some of the things, particularly when it came to S-corps that was passed on a federal level. But in Kansas, of course, you can't deficit spend. So their whole idea is we're going to cut taxes so much that economic activity is going to explode. And so we're going to cut taxes, but on a volume level, we're going to make more in tax revenue. That's what growth does. And so here he is on, this is clip number 6. Where he talks about Brownback. This is all from the same, wait, which one's the first one in the, Brendan? Is 6 the earlier of the two? Yes. Okay, so this is number 6.
And Brownback is, you don't want to make Kansas look like New York. You want to make Kansas look like, Texas. And so Sam Brownback cut tax rates. They've got some growth going on there. But the left, he is under complete assault from the left, and they're creating this fairy tale that it's ruining the state, and we've cut taxes, quote, for rich people, and, we're defunding the schools. There is no truth to any of that. But, what's really interesting about this is that the unions are just pouring money into this race because there's a big election, as you know, in 10 days. But Sam Brownback has been one of the top governors. I think he's going to win. He's going to defeat these left-wing interest groups that are trying to run him out of town.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. And, of course,
yeah, it is interesting. All right, pause it. Let's take a look at that assessment. This is in 2014. It is true. Brownback went on to win by 3.69%. Within 12 months, then on to 24 months of that election, his approval rating was 23%. Why was that the case? Because after passing those tax cuts, Moody's downgraded the state bond rating in 2014. The S&P downgraded its credit rating from AA plus to AA in August 2014 due to budget that analysts described as structurally unbalanced, again in 2017 from AA to AA minus. By 2018, overall growth and job creation in Kansas had underperformed the national economy, neighboring states, and even Kansas's own previous growth years. Kansas jobs growth lagged behind neighboring Missouri, Colorado, and Nebraska. By early 2017, Kansas had had 9 rounds of budget cuts over 4 years, 3 credit downgrades, missed state payments, basically a rolling fiscal crisis that started 30 seconds after Moore was done talking on that radio program.
So not enough tax cuts?
To make up on the budget shortfall, despite the fact that all the tax cuts were going to create growth and increase the revenue that came in, lawmakers had to tap into state reserves that were set aside for future spending. Construction projects were postponed. Pension contributions and Medicaid were cut. And since approximately half the state's budget went to school funding, education was particularly hard hit. The state university, which used to be the pride of Kansas, severe cuts. Kansas is still roiling, so much so that in 2018, lawmakers reversed those tax cuts. They gave up on the whole thing. And Sam Brownback, knowing that he couldn't rerun for election, knowing that his political future in Kansas was over, got a job with the Trump administration as the ambassador, are you ready to this, of faith, or to faith. Literally an ambassadorship position somewhere hovering over the planet, I guess.
He's securing thoughts and prayers.
Securing thoughts and prayers, floating in a bubble, hovering amongst us as like an ethereal object. But let's hear more of Stephen Moore talk about the great Kansas miracle that was happening. His entire economic paradigm falling apart as he's speaking on there. All those lies that he was talking about, lies. Go ahead.
Our friend Governor Walker in Wisconsin is fighting for his political
Wait, is
life.
this the next guy? Number 7? Yeah, let's go to number 7. Oh, yeah, Stephen Moore also said that Scott Walker, this Foxconn deal, is really going to help him with re-election, incidentally. Oh, no, in the presidential election. That's where he thought. I should remind you, Scott Walker, first guy to drop out in the 2016 election.
Uh-huh.
Here, what are you seeing in the numbers that should make people excited about what's happening in Kansas?
Kansas, well, they are starting to create jobs again in Kansas, and that's a big deal. They're starting to see jobs come back, and they're starting to economize on their services. They're trying to
economize on their services. That sounds very good. You know what that is?
Like
they're having to cut their budget because the revenue's not coming in. Go ahead.
They're trying to make allow taxpayers to get a bang for their buck. Now the unions hate that.
Pause it.
Kevin,
do you know what bang for their buck means? We've cut the prices of services so that they're more cost effective. Yeah.
I want to give you no bucks for no bang.
Right, exactly.
Now the unions hate that, Kevin, as you know. They hate that idea. They want government to be as wasteful and bloated as possible, so that more money goes into their coffers and funds the big labor bosses. That's what this fight is all about.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the numbers, and they're pretty startling, actually. And and they look small, but on the other hand, you got to look at it contextually. For example, Illinois is 4 times larger than Kansas. Yet, meanwhile, Kansas has created more private sector jobs in the entire state of Illinois. That to me is a startling statistic.
Yeah, because Illinois raised their income taxes. I'm from Illinois, I think, as you know, Kevin, and I'm from the Chicago area, and Illinois does all the wrong things. When I was growing up there, the income tax rate was 3%. Then Governor Quinn raised it to 5%, and now they're going to raise it up to. The unions want to raise it to 7 or 8%. It's unbelievable. There's never enough money for these unions. Never enough money.
Never enough money.
Never enough money. These numbers are startling, and it's very important when you're talking about the Kansas miracle to talk about a different state and to talk about unions who are not involved in any of that.
Where does he think unions get their money?
They get it from some type of secret well, and then they spend it and they funnel it to the big fat
from the
cats.
government. They want more and more and more. That's all they do.
Really.
And if you had bigger tax cuts, then you would have bigger jobs.
And that dude may be sitting on the Fed.
Stephen Moore, great guy, smart guy.
Literally get their money from the dues people pay from the
Real
money that they make
economist guy.
working.